In 1986, inside a family photography shop in La Plata, Argentina, blood began to rise from the floor. There was no body, no wounded person, no clear source for where it had come from. But the red liquid moved through the rooms, drawing crowds, police, priests, believers and skeptics to a house that seemed to have become the centre of something no one could explain. Less than a year later, in Atlanta, Georgia, another ordinary home would be given an almost identical name. Two houses, thousands of miles apart. Two families who woke to find blood where it should not have been. And in both cases, the tests would come back with the same impossible answer. The blood was human.
Summer's a gift. The gift of days that last a little longer. A brighter state of mind. So gift yourself a new Kia at the Kia Summer Sticker Sales Event. With specially tagged vehicles including the Sorrento, Sportage, Carnival, as well as the Niro Hybrid. All backed by a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty. So the gift of summer can keep on giving for summers to come. Kia, movement that inspires.
Call 800-333-4KIA for details. Always drive safely. Event ends 7/6/26. See dealer for warranty details.
Sierra has all the best active and outdoor brands for the super athletic stuff, like running gear for cruising up the trail. Woo! And the super athlete-ish stuff, like fishing gear for chilling by the creek. Nice cast. Fitness apparel to push for higher reps. You got this. And golf balls priced so you can afford to lose one. Or a few. Head to Sierra or Sierra.com for the brands you want at the prices that let you do it all. From athletic to athlete-ish, Sierra's got it.
Hello, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Toby.
And welcome to the Whispering Woods podcast. This episode is all about...
Bleeding houses.
Yeah, bleeding houses. Yeah? But actually bleeding houses, not bleeding houses. I've got two stories that are all about bleeding houses. They bleed, okay? The blood.
Yeah, it's in the name.
Yeah, it really is. But first of all, we have a new patron.
E-Man.
Yes. Hi, Iman. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. We really appreciate it. I'm saying it like that because it's Iman. And we know Iman and we love her. And we're just being silly, I guess. But thank you, Iman. We really, really appreciate it. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can do so by visiting patreon.com/The Whispering Woods, where we have a number of tiers and you can listen ad-free and in advance. And we are also on Apple Premium, where for $4.99 a month you can listen ad-free to all episodes and in advance. Okay, I'm still going through all these paper clippings and I'm really, really enjoying it. And I've got the bleeding houses now. So I'll get straight into it. Are you ready for the stories?
Yes, I am.
On the morning of Saturday, the 15th of November, 1986, Luis Fresco left his home in La Plata, Argentina, to buy the newspaper before opening the family photography business. The shop was called Photo Iris, and it stood on Calle 54, between 21 and 22, in a property that was both business and home. Luis lived there with his wife, Cipriana Nunez, and by then the house had been part of their lives for decades. It was the sort of place where the day began with routine, with shutters, sweeping, errands, work, and the ordinary preparations of a small family business, opening its doors to the city. That morning, while Lewis was away, Cipriana began to clean. She was with her sister-in-law, Blanca Rodriguez, when she opened the door to sweep properly near the entrance. It should have been nothing more than dust and the beginning of another working day. As she looked down at the floor, she saw something coming up from the tiles. A red liquid was rising through the floor. It did not look as though it had been spilled from a bottle or tracked in from the street. It seemed to be emerging from the house itself, pushing up through the spaces between the tiles and spreading across the ground where people would normally walk into photo iris. Cipriana later said she didn't know what it was or why it was there, only that what she saw looked like blood. The discovery turned an ordinary Saturday morning into something that the city of La Plata would remember for decades. The red stains were not confined to one spot by the door. They began to stretch from the entrance of the business into the interior of the property, moving through the house in a strange route that witnesses would later describe almost like a path. They went from the shop front towards the kitchen at the back, crossing the rooms in a way that made the scene feel less like a mess and more like something had passed through. Some of the stains were already drying. Others, further inside, remained semi-liquid, thick and dark, with a texture that people at the scene compared to blood beginning to coagulate. Those who touched it said it stained their fingers, and it had the same viscosity as blood. Police who arrived at the property guarded the marks and tried to keep people from stepping on them. But by then, the house had already begun to draw attention. Word spread quickly through La Plata. By midday, the home and shop on Calle 54 had become crowded with neighbours, believers, curious onlookers, and people who had come because they'd heard that blood was coming out of the floor. Some prayed, some cried, some pressed religious cards and holy images into the red liquid. What had begun as a frightening discovery in a family business was turning hour by hour into something that looked to some like a miracle and to others like a scene from a nightmare. Lois Fusco was overwhelmed by what had happened in his own home. He told reporters that he had lived there for 45 years and nothing like it had ever occurred. He did not present himself as a devout man. His wife was the believer, he said, while he had his own way of thinking about God and religion. But still, the blood was there, and whatever he believed or did not believe, something had appeared on the floor of his house that neither he nor anyone else could explain. For Cipriana, the event seemed to connect with something that had happened shortly before. A priest named Father Angel Diaro, who was a friend of the family, had brought an image of the Virgin Rosa Mystica from Europe. Before the image was placed in the nearby church of Nuestra Senora de la Victoria, it had been brought to photo iris so Lewis could photograph it. Cipriana remembered that theirs had been the first house visited by the Virgin, and that detail soon became part of the story people told about the blood. Years later, Oscar Fusco, the couple's son, would describe how the liquid seemed to follow a strange course through the property. He said that where there was an open doorway, the blood entered, moved towards the back of the house through the passage and into the kitchen. When it seemed to have stopped on the floor, it appeared again somewhere else, this time on top of a table. Oscar said the path, followed by the blood, matched the route taken by the image of the Rostra Mystica when it had been brought into the house to be photographed. That detail gave the case its religious connotation, because the blood did not seem random to those who believed. It seemed to be tracing something, repeating something, marking the passage of the Virgin through the rooms of Photo Iris. As the crowd grew, police entered the house and began treating the matter as something that required official attention, even if no one quite knew what sort of case it was. Commissario Enzo Ricciero was involved, along with Judge Nelky Martinez, and the file was opened under the cautious heading of a presumed finding of a blood sample. The language was plain, but the scene was not. There was a house full of people. There were stains spreading across the floor. There were believers treating the place like a shrine, neighbours whispering about a miracle, and police trying to preserve the marks while the family stood at the centre of something that had already escaped them. Father Dioro came too, and that weekend he blessed the house and the business. The following day, the strangeness continued to build around the property. One story says that 2 dark cars stopped outside the house, and that 8 well-dressed people, men and women, got out and asked to see the rooms. They searched the place thoroughly, going through every corner, and before they left, one of the women quietly approached Luis Fresco and told him that they had been waiting for this to happen. Then they went away. Another story came from a neighbour who said she had heard gunshots in the early hours of that same Saturday morning. When she looked out, she claimed to have seen someone wounded being taken into a nearby place. That rumour gave the blood another possible shape, darker and more criminal than miraculous. But no body was ever found, and no missing victim was ever tied to the stains inside Photo Iris. For several days, the case held the city's attention. People came from La Plata, Berisso, and Ensenada to see the house, to pray, to ask questions, or simply to be close to whatever had happened there. The family were surrounded by strangers, and not everyone believed what they were seeing. At some point, graffiti appeared nearby, claiming that the blood was a lie, but the official results would soon make the story harder to dismiss. On 21st of November, the reports came back. The substance found on the floor of the Fresco home was human blood. It was type A positive. That result did not explain where it had come from. It did not say who it belonged to. It did not turn the blood into a miracle, a crime, or a hoax. It simply confirmed that the red liquid, which had appeared from the floor of Photo Iris, was not paint, not rust or dye, and not some harmless household stain. It was blood from a human body, found in a house where no body had been discovered. By then, other people had begun to arrive with stranger interests. A parapsychologist named Daniel Sanchez came to investigate, drawn by the same unanswered questions that had brought the crowds, the police and the reporters. The house had become one of those places where every explanation seemed to leave something behind. If it was a miracle, why did it appear as something so frightening? If it was a crime, where was the victim? If it was a hoax, why did the blood rise in such a strange path? And why did no one ever produce a clear account of how it had been done? 11 days after the discovery, another report appeared, suggesting that police suspected the blood might have been the work of a disturbed person with an interest in esoteric fantasies, and that some development might come soon. But nothing came of it. No culprit was named. No neat explanation followed. The case faded from the daily news without ever losing the thing that had made it so unsettling in the first place. The house on Calais 54 had bled. Over time, the crowds left. The business returned as normal. The family grew older. Those who had first witnessed the event died, including Oscar Fusco, who'd been young when the blood appeared, and who later gave the detail about the route through the house and the Rosa Mystica. The building itself is gone now. The old Photo Iris property was eventually demolished, and an apartment block stands where the bleeding house once stood. But later retellings added another darker element to the story. Daniel Sanchez, the parapsychologist who had come to investigate, was later said to have been admitted to a psychiatric institution. Enzo Ricciero, the police officer involved at the beginning, died after a serious fire at his home in 2007. The original witnesses passed away, the house disappeared, and what remained was the legend of a mystery that seemed to touch everyone who came too close to it. La Plata never forgot. The story even inspired a tango called La Casa Sangrante, as if the city had found a way to turn its unease into music. But the song did not solve it, and neither did the police, the church, the neighbours, the investigators, or the years that followed. On a Saturday morning in November 1986, inside a family photography shop and home in La Plata, blood appeared from the floor. It travelled from the entrance towards the kitchen. It seemed to follow the path of a holy image that had passed through the rooms days earlier. It appeared again on a table. People came to pray over it. Police tested it. The results said it was human blood, type A positive, and no one ever proved where it came from. The story of the bleeding house in La Plata might have remained a strange local mystery, tied forever to one street, one family, one business, and one city's memory of the day blood rose from the floor. But less than a year later, another house would be given almost the same name. This time the story would not unfold in Argentina, beneath the shadow of a holy image and the crowds who came to pray over the stains. It would happen in Atlanta, Georgia, inside a small brick home on Fountain Drive, where an elderly couple had lived quietly for more than 20 years. There would be no visiting virgin, no religious cards pressed into the blood, no neighbours treating the place like a shrine. There would only be a locked house, a woman stepping into her bathroom, and the sudden discovery that something dark and human had appeared where nothing should have been. On the evening of 8th of September 1987, Minnie Clyde Winston stepped into the bathroom of her home on Fountain Drive, expecting nothing more unusual than a long soak in the bath. She was 77 years old, and she lived there with her husband, William, who was 79. The house was small, brick-built, and ordinary in the way so many post-war homes are ordinary, with bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room, hallways, a basement, and the familiar corners that come with more than 2 decades of living in one place. The Winstons had been there for 22 years, long enough for every room to feel known, every sound to have its place, every creak and pipe and footstep to belong to the private language of a home. That night, Minnie went into the bathroom and stepped towards the tub. Then she felt something wet beneath her feet. At first it might have seemed like water. Bathrooms hold water. A damp tile, a spill near the bath, a drip from the tap. Any of those things would have made sense. But whatever Minnie had stepped in was not water. It was thicker than that, slicker. And when she looked down, she saw something dark on the floor. It looked like blood. It was not poured neatly in one place, as if someone had cut themselves and stood there bleeding. It seemed to have sprayed or forced its way up through the tiled floor, spreading across the bathroom in a way that made no immediate sense. Minnie called for William, and together they began to look through the house, expecting perhaps to find some injury, some broken object, some explanation waiting in the next room. But the blood was not only in the bathroom. It was in the hallways. It was in one of the bedrooms. It was in the kitchen and the living room. It was in the basement. It was even said to be in the crawl space beneath the house, appearing on floors and walls in places where neither of them could explain it. The more they looked, the worse it became, because each room seemed to take the thing further away from anything ordinary. No one in the house was hurt. William was not bleeding. Minnie was not bleeding. There was no wounded visitor, no body, no sign of some dreadful accident. The doors had been locked earlier that evening, and there was no obvious evidence that anyone had broken in. Yet the house around them had become marked with blood, not in one room, not in one trail, but in scattered places through the home they'd lived in for more than 20 years. The Winstons called 911. Police and emergency medical technicians came to Fountain Drive, expecting perhaps to find an injury, a crime scene, or at least a person in need of help. Instead, they found an elderly couple, frightened and bewildered, inside a house where blood appeared to have come from nowhere. The EMTs could find nothing to treat, because neither William nor Minnie had been injured, and the police were left with a scene that looked terrible, without offering them the one thing they needed most, a source. Samples were taken from the house and sent away for testing. By then, the story was already strange enough. An ordinary Atlanta home had blood on the floors and walls, with no victim, no visible break-in, and no clear explanation for how it had got there. But the laboratory results made it stranger. It was blood, human blood, and it was not the same blood type as either William or Minnie. The blood found in the house was reported to be type O, while both of the Winstons were type A. That detail took away one of the simplest possible answers. It was not just that the couple said the blood was not theirs. The test results appeared to say the same thing. By the next day, Fountain Drive was no longer just a quiet residential street with a frightened elderly couple behind one of its doors. It had become the place newspapers would call the Blood House. Reporters came, photographers came, curious strangers came. The telephone rang again and again, until the Winstons were not only trapped inside the mystery of what had happened, but inside the attention that followed it. Minnie, who had only wanted a bath in her own home, found herself being asked the same questions by people who had no answers to give her in return. Where had the blood come from? Who had put it there? How could a locked house bleed? The police looked for signs of a break-in and found none. They looked for evidence of a crime and found no body, no missing victim, no clear act to investigate. The house had been clean earlier that evening, and between the time the doors were locked and the discovery was made, There was no sign that anyone had entered. Wherever the blood had come from, it had appeared in the house where no one could find the person it belonged to. As the days passed, the story grew around them. Some people thought there must have been a hoax, though the explanation never seemed to settle cleanly over the facts. Others wondered whether there had been a crime that had somehow left no body, no victim, and no trail beyond the walls and floors of the Winston home. There were people drawn to the story for stranger reasons too, because once a house has been described as bleeding, it crosses a line. It stops being only a police matter, and it becomes something darker, something that belongs to the same uneasy world as curses, infestations, and hauntings. The Winstons did not welcome that attention. At one point, a man who described himself as a parapsychologist arrived with a reporter and tried to get into the house, but the couple turned them away. Minnie and William had already had enough of strangers, enough of questions, enough of people treating their home as a spectacle. Their fear had been turned into a headline, and still no one could tell them why blood had appeared in their rooms. The investigation did not bring a neat ending. Weeks later, police were still no closer to finding out what had happened. They had not established that a crime had been committed, and the case slipped into that strange category of stories that are not solved. William and Minnie stayed at Fountain Drive. It had been their home for 22 years, and whatever had happened there on that September night, they were not driven out by it. William died just 2 years later, in the same house where the walls and floors had once been found marked with human blood. Minnie lived for many more years, reaching the age of 104. No further incident like it was reported. The blood did not return. The walls did not open again. The floors did not bleed a second time. But for one night in 1987, inside a locked home in Atlanta, an elderly couple watched the ordinary rooms of their house become something impossible. Blood appeared in the bathroom, the bedrooms, the kitchen, the hallways, the basement, and the crawl space. It was tested, and it was human. It did not match either of them, and no one ever proved where it came from.
Summer's a gift of days that last a little longer, a brighter state of mind. So gift yourself a new Kia at the Kia Summer Sticker Sales Event, with specially tagged vehicles including the Sorrento, Sportage, Carnival, as well as the Niro Hybrid. All backed by a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty. So the gift of summer can keep on giving for summers to come. Kia, movement that inspires.
Call 800-333-4KIA for details. Always drive safely. Event ends 7/6/26. See dealer for warranty details.
Adventures don't always go as planned. One minute you're cruising in your RV, the next your tire hits a massive pothole. Progressive is ready for you when the unexpected hits, with excellent claim service for your boat, RV, and motorcycle. Plus optional coverage like roadside assistance and on-the-water towing. Visit Progressive.com and make sure your next adventure is unforgettable, for the right reasons. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Coverage is subject to policy terms and limits.
What strikes me is how similar these stories are.
Yeah, very similar.
That both couples, both lived in their house for some time, both houses bled, and both couples had the opposite type of blood to what was bleeding down the walls or through the floor. Bleeding heck.
Yeah, a lot of bleeding going on there, innit?
They're bleeding worse, I tell you. I tell thee. I don't really know what to say, but imagine that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't like to see it all over my not clean floors.
Have to get new floors, ain't you?
It's bad enough when Mickey got cut, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know? I don't want to see blood. I'm just really, really bad with blood.
Yeah.
We all are, aren't we? We've all
Yeah,
got
well, as long as it is not on me.
that phobia, that blood phobia. George is the worst. Like, well, he's terrible. Once he came into my room, he cut himself with the bread knife accidentally. We laugh about this now. He woke me up in the middle of the night. And, right, it wasn't all that bad, but he cut himself with the knife on the finger. And because he woke me up and I was in such a panic, I went into shock, right? So I was ringing the ambulance because I was still half asleep. It's all a bit pathetic now, to be quite frank, it really is. And so I started feeling sick, and that was obviously my blood pressure went really funny. I was crawling along the floor on the phone to 999, right, gagging. I couldn't talk, so George had to take over his own call, 999. It's like his mum was really passed out in the bathroom. And I went cold, sweaty and pale. I was in physical shock, right? Because I'm one of those. It's just happened. My lips were pale, everything. And I was like, good. I can't talk. It's like gagging. Oh, it was horrible. And I had to put my head down on the floor. I said, I can't talk to you. You're going to have to talk to him. And it was just quite a small cut on this. I mean, it was a bad cut with lots of blood. But it's the way he woke me up, and I just can't anyway. I really can. Amazing's the same. Oh, we all are. We're just like, when it comes to blood, like I love horror films, but I just can't do the gore. I like it to be paranormal and spooky. I don't want guts and stuff like that, I really can't cope with it.
Yeah.
I do, what I'm like. Especially since George's accident. Now, the finger thing with the knife was prior to that. But George is like, he's always getting into accidents. Like that rock fell down on him and stuff like that. I did the same thing. I went in shock. Because I just can't handle it.
Yeah.
I really can't.
I don't think he could. He
couldn't, because he went in shock. And then he passed out. And then he said, I just thought it was a good idea to go to sleep. Because he was only little, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Oh dear. Anyway, that's enough about blood. I'm done with that. Done.
Too much bleeding and stuff.
Yeah. I can't deal with it, mate. I just And not long after George had his accident, Willow fell off the chair in the garden. And she came up with a bump on her head, and it was a really big bump. And I ran in the house, curled myself into a little ball and said, I can't deal with it. I can't.
And Willow's just there, and I put my head out then.
No, she wasn't on her own. Macy was there. But because of the PTSD, I was just like, I really can't deal with this.
Well, that's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
We will indeed. I'll catch you on Thursday for the Reddit and listener story episode. Take care, everyone.
Goodbye.
Summer's a gift. The gift of days that last a little longer. A brighter state of mind. So gift yourself a new Kia at the Kia Summer Sticker Sales Event. With specially tagged vehicles including the Sorrento, Sportage, Carnival, as well as the Niro Hybrid. All backed by a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty. So the gift of summer can keep on giving for summers to come. Kia, movement that inspires.
Call 800-333-4KIA for details. I was Drive Safely. Event ends 7/6/26. See dealer for warranty details.
Adventures don't always go as planned. One minute you're cruising in your RV, the next your tire hits a massive pothole. Progressive is ready for you when the unexpected hits, with excellent claim service for your boat, RV, and motorcycle. Plus, optional coverage like roadside assistance and on-the-water towing. Visit Progressive.com and make sure your next adventure is unforgettable. For the right reasons. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Coverage is subject to policy terms and limits.
The stories told on the Whispering Woods are inspired by historical records, witness reports, and local folklore. While every effort is made to research and represent events accurately, some details, names, and locations may differ from official accounts or have been changed out of respect for those involved. These episodes are created for storytelling and entertainment purposes and should not be considered definitive fact or investigative journalism.